Hey nerds, welcome to another episode of the Nerd Rundown Recap. I'm your host, Erik Hare, and with me tonight are two of my most favorite nerds in the world, Mr. Morgan Santo.
But I gained it.
And the great lady of the show, Miss Megan Bradbury.
I'm going to try this out. Ritsas Valitsasa.
Oh,
That's High Valerian for
wow.
Hello Boys.
I like that.
Bringing the High Valerian with her on the show. All right. Well, thank you both.
I have to start saying that.
Yeah, I was talking in High Valerian, which is interesting because I want to talk about that because there was some stuff going on in the episode where, and we'll get to it a little bit later. But there's some High Valerian stuff. There's a lot happened in this episode. This was a loaded episode.
Oh, yeah.
So
yes, it was.
Yeah, so we'll be talking today, recapping and talking about and offer some thoughts and insights into episode 7 of HBO's series House of the Dragon. If you would take a moment to hit the like and subscribe buttons and leave a comment on the video, it really helps the channel a great deal. If you're listening on Apple, iTunes, podcast, whatever, Apple Podcasts or whatever it is, if you could leave a review on there, that would be helpful as well, or wherever you listen to your podcast. So the title for this week's House of the Dragon Hot D episode is Driftmark. And this is the location for the entire episode. So up to this point, for the most part, we've gone to King's Landing. We've kind of been around to some other places. But this entire episode, for the most part, takes place at Driftmark. So we open the episode. We are at the funeral for Lena, who was killed in the previous episode. At the end of the previous episode, she was struggling with childbirth and was like, "Hey, I'm not going out. I'm not going out like that. Like I'm not." And which is an interesting contrast to Emma's childbirth that she had in the first episode, and Meg, I'm so glad that you're on the show because it's been, and I've been bugging you about getting on here. I'm like, you got to get caught up because we've had a lot of childbirth in this season that we never got really in much of Game of Thrones, and so I thought it would be nice to have somebody who's actually gone through childbirth have on the show to talk about childbirth.
Slightly different perspective than you guys.
Right? Yeah,
I've had the flu before.
I mean, I'm like like I said last week, I'm like a total ignorant fool when it comes to, I feel like Lena was awesome because he was like, was it terribly painful? And I'm like, I'm like on the sidelines with like pom poms and stuff, and I'm like, way to go, baby! But yeah, so we start off with the funeral of Lena, because like I said, she did pass away during childbirth, and so they make it a point to say, when the Targaryens die, they are cremated through fire, and then but with the Corlys folks, with Corlys's folks, the Valerian people, they with the Valerian folks, they get buried at sea. That's how they do it. So we kind of start the episode out that way, but overall, let's kind of rewind just a little bit. Morg, what were your overall thoughts for the episode that you kind of picked up on? What were your overall thoughts of the episode compared to some other ones?
This, I think, is my favorite episode. Don't get me wrong, I like the action of episode 3 there a lot, but no, because a lot happens here and they do it in a great way. That this is a standout episode for me. It makes me excited about Game of Thrones world again. When you see this politicking that's going on in this, and just the way they, we'll get into it, but just the way, Rhaenyra and the Queen are butting head, everything that happens in this, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Great.
Loved it.
Meg, how about you?
I'm probably going to agree with you on that. And I'm trying to think back. There was only one part that made me maybe two, that made me kind of go, ugh.
Sure. Yeah. And we'll probably
all
get
these
into
other
those because I
episodes-
think I feel the same way. But yeah.
Yeah, like the first one, I literally had to pause it for a minute and like take a moment during that childbirth scene because that was rough.
Yeah.
Other scenes, you know, I'm again watching this on my phone, so I'm able to kind of cover up portions that I can't watch when it's a little too gory or whatever.
Right.
But I liked like the drama in this episode and just the sort of like everything coming to a head kind of was really, really cool to see.
Right. Yeah. I think both of you are totally correct in. I think one of the themes that we've talked about over the last 2 or 3 episodes is there was a lot of chess pieces moving into places. And I think we got our first taste of conflict, real conflict in this particular episode with those chess pieces. Our 2 queens, instead of having a king and a queen on the board, we've got 2 queens, and those 2 have still yet to engage in any type of combat, if you will, but that time seems like it's coming. Right. So all in all, I agree with both of you. This, I think, might be the best episode so far to this point. There was a couple bits where I was like, you know, but for the most part, I thought it was pretty good. So we do open at Driftmark. We do open during the funeral with Lena. So Meg, if you wouldn't mind, talk about the kind of set the scene for us as we're going through this. You know, there's a lot of people. I mean, almost the entire cast of the main cast is here for this particular funeral, and so kind of talk about how things kind of opened up for everybody. So.
I mean, it kind of goes around with the shot where you kind of see everybody throwing glances towards each other. You can kind of feel the tension between all the, you know, the families and all the different people in the families and all the different generations in that family. And I had so was it not Corliss? Was Corliss the one doing the eulogy?
I don't think so. That's not Corliss. That's I want to say that's her uncle. I think that might be his brother.
Yeah.
I think that's Corliss's brother is who that is.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
So, but there was something that he said, and that was all in the High Valerian, so it was all subtitled. But something to the effect of like, our blood runs thick,
right? And
something like that. And Damon laughed really inappropriately at that part, and right. I wasn't quite sure why he did that. But it was definitely a lot of tension, even though there wasn't a whole lot happening other than, you know, the ceremony for Lena.
Yeah. I feel like he laughed, and maybe I'm taking it wrong, is because when the man said that, he looked specifically at Damon as he said it.
Right.
So I think it was supposed to be like an insult to him about like, you don't have that real blood, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I think his laughing was just like his reaction to it, to be like, F you back.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, but I know I could be reading it wrong.
Yeah. I honestly, the laugh felt out of place. And so I don't know. I think if I'm reading it the way I read it was, Damon doesn't think that anybody who's not a Targaryen is worth anything. Like that, like that's the way I feel. Like you're not Targaryens, so you're doesn't matter what your blood does or whatever, because we're the only ones that matter. You know, the Targaryens are the only ones that matter. So again, I could be reading that wrong as well. I don't know. It felt weird. It was disrespectful. You know, and it just continues to paint Damon as just a douche. Like he just is like he just does everything his own way. The way he kind of sits back and the way he's, you know, laying back and just kind of not really, it doesn't feel like he's even taking things seriously, which in contrast to, you know, you later on we kind of see Jacaerys and Lucerys, they like reach out to their cousins and like they, you know, he walks over there, Jacaerys walks over there, and he's like trying to comfort them and being tender. And, you know, we get contrasted with like Aegon, who I cannot wait for this actor to stop playing Aegon. Like I can't wait for us to move to the next time jump, because I cannot stand this kid. Like, and it's nothing personal against him. He's doing a great job. he literally is doing such a great job that I cannot stand this kid, and I don't want to see him anymore. He just drives me crazy. So, but Aegon kind of like rolls his eyes, you know, and it's just you can see there's a division in the family that's there, and they do a great job, I think, of kind of calling it out. So Helena, who is Aegon's sister and Aemon's sister, she's kind of playing over in the corner with like a spider, and the boys are like, you know, they start having a conversation about doing their duty, you know, about he's got, you know, Aegon's like, I don't want to have to get married to her, and Aegon's like, or Aemon's like, well, I do my duty, you know, and, and all this stuff, and it's just kind of weird. Like it's, you know, like the whole fact that they're just like, it's incest is no big deal. It just is weird, you know. But
to be discussing that at the funeral,
yeah,
like
to be discussing at the funeral and all
weird.
That stuff. It's just kind of weird. But we got like Larys Strong is there, and he's kind of like lurking, and he's like following Allison around,
creeping
like
behind.
Yeah, it was
super weird.
Yeah, it was pretty weird.
Very weird.
But then Morg, we kind of pan down. The camera kind of pans down, and we see Laner in the water. So talk about that scene, because it was interesting. I thought, you know, he's obviously this is his sister, so you know, we kind of pan down and see Laner down there. What was going on with him?
Yeah, so you know, I forgot that they were brother and sisters, honestly, because with the time jumps and stuff, I just completely forgot about it. But you remember they were very close.
Yeah.
So I mean, he basically lost a part of him, as he kind of describes, and he's in that water just kind of losing his mind. But it was significant because they send
his dad's like pissed.
Corlys.
Yeah, his dad, Corlys.
His dad, is super mad about this.
Yeah.
One is, you know, it's like, no, you need to be a man up here,
Right,
with me by my side,
right,
through this, you know,
right.
But then he sends Laner's real lover,
Right,
to go retrieve him. Like, hey, get him back up here, which was kind of significant because everybody looked.
Yeah.
And again, it's that whole everybody knows.
Well, and he even says
nobody will say. He
says like will you go retrieve your benefactor or something like that,
yeah,
or something like that. He refers to him. He's like go, which I think you and I are big Walking Dead fans. So the fact the guy's name is Coral, but
I know
it's like
Coral.
Coral,
get in the house, Coral. Get in the house.
So you know, he says go retrieve your guy.
I forget what word he uses.
I can't remember exactly what word it is, but it was interesting that he chose him to go after him and bring him up. So, but yeah, I mean, Laner.
You know, I want to say something too. You brought up that whole, like, they're talking about the daughter, and Aegon's like, I would do my duty. This is a big episode for him.
Yeah.
Or Aemon. Yeah, this is a big episode for him.
It is.
And I only like that part. I mean, as weird it is, but it shows he's kind of like, no, I'm becoming a man. Like,
yeah,
I know what I got to do.
Well, it's a very interesting juxtaposition between the two brothers, because one is there for business, and he knows what the score is, and it's not Aegon. You know, right. Aegon's going to get trashed at the wedding and piss people off and say the wrong things, and you know, just he's there. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. And Aemond is like, you know, he's focused on the prize. Like, he knows the score and stuff like that, and so he's kind of he is taking things more seriously. So I think that's a very good point, Morgan, to kind of point out. So Meg, we kind of really get our first view of Varys at that point, and time has not been good to him. The time that they've had to come across the sea and stuff. He just looks exhausted. So kind of talk about him and his interaction with his brother in that scene.
With Viserys.
Yeah. Viserys. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he. The time jumps are really messing with me with him specifically, because he just looks so ragged.
Awful.
But he kind of has that like regret kind of thing going on. Like, okay, it's time for you to come home. And Damon continues to just be the douche that he is.
Yeah.
He's very good in that role.
He really is. He really is. But you can see Viserys is, I wouldn't say regretful, but he's just trying to hold everything together, you know, and everybody keeps being selfishly their own interests. All they care about is their own interests, you know, and that was kind of a good theme that kind of ran through the whole episode, because later on we have a conversation, you know, almost just after this, we have a conversation between Corlys and Rhaenys where they talk about that very same thing, you know, this selfishness that's put them in this situation. But yeah, so Viserys reaches out to Daemon, and Daemon kind of scorns the request, and you just see Viserys like, you know, like, can't you just get over yourself and come home? I need you. I'm not going to be around much longer. And so we see that. So we cut away a little bit, and then kind of a little bit later we see Otto. Really, we saw him as the hand, and he gives his platitudes to Daemon as he walks by. But, you know, and Daemon says something. I actually had to rewind it like 2 or 3 times to try and hear what he was saying. And he says the leech. He said something along the lines of the leech grows fat.
When the leech's belly is fat, it will still continue to
continue
to eat or hunger or something.
Right.
Basically,
you know,
just like
making a comment that Otto, you know, it's like, you've got all this, and it's still not enough for you. It's still not enough for you, and so it foreshadows really the division between the Greens and the Blacks at this point. The Greens and the Blacks it's coming to a head, and it's not going to get any better. So then we kind of cut to a scene a little bit after that. Otto is out. He grabs Aegon because he's basically passed out on the side of the staircase, and he grabs him and sends him to bed, you know, which is kind of interesting because this is going to be the future king, and he's, you know, talking, you know, or potentially could be the future king or whatever. And he's talking to him the way, if he has his way, he will be. He's, you know, just kind of manhandling him and saying, hey, you need to grow up here and all that. But
again, we see right at the top of the stairs, Daemon, who clearly is the one that's like, all right, get my brother. Like, he can't embarrass us. We need to get him out of here.
Right. Exactly. So then we cut to a scene between Corlys and Rhaenys, and they are discussing Lyanna's death. And, you know, Lena kind of, I guess she views the death as a punishment for her husband's hubris and her husband's desperation. Like, if their daughter had married the guy from Bravos like they had originally wanted him to, which, you know, maybe it was maybe that was never going to work out, but because of Corlys's maneuvering, because he still holds that, he still is upset that his wife isn't the queen, you know, and isn't in charge, and he still feels slighted and cheated out of that, and he can't let that go. And so she feels like, because your lust for power and your lust for the throne, she's like, I've let go of that. I haven't thought about that for a generation, and you can't let it go. And now it's cost us our daughter. And so there was some interesting stuff that kind of went back and forth between them. Corlys got a lot of good points in there. I'll kind of quote a couple of different things that he's, you know, talking about. He said, you know, she, like I said, she thinks it's a punishment, and he says, what is this brief mortal life if not a pursuit of legacy? Like, what does it matter? What are we doing all this for if you're not going to be remembered, you know? So, Meg, Rhaenys, you know, then kind of she kind of puts Corlys on the spot and makes a request of him, that he's going to have to step up and make some changes. So what does she kind of say to him about that?
Well, she's like, if I'm remembering correctly, talking about how, like, everybody knows that Rhaenyra's kids are not technically their grandkids, even though we're
Right.
not going to talk about it.
Right.
And
Right. Because they have that moment where she's like, come on, dude, you know,
Right.
and I know,
Right.
and everybody knows.
Everybody knows.
So,
right. But so was it that what did she want him to do exactly?
So the castle and the lands and the properties of Driftmark itself, she makes the request of him that Driftmark should go to Damon because he's the heir, I guess, or whatever. But she's like, no, it needs to go to Lena and Damon's children. It needs to go to the children, not to him, and
not to the princess,
and not to Rhaenyra's children.
Right.
It does not need to go to Laenor's children because those really aren't his kids. And
they're not Valerians.
Right. They're not really, they're Targaryens for one thing, that part is not in question, but the paternity of them is what's in question. So, which we find out a little bit later.
Blood.
Yeah. Which we find out a little bit later is not quite as clear cut as we're made to believe. We'll kind of talk about that with Rhaenyra and Daemon as they kind of walk along the beach, but there was some interesting and some other conversation pieces that kind of came up with this, which was, I think, quite interesting because they do make it clear that it's not what you think. So, but anyhow, so she makes the request that Driftmark says, and I think Corlys agrees. Yeah, you're probably right. Lena's children should get Driftmark. It should stay within the family, but Corlys ends it with kind of a piece where he says, history does not remember blood. It remembers names, and that I thought was a great line. He had two really great lines in there, and I think both of them were tremendous. And man, what a joy this, and I can't think of his name right now, but what a joy that guy has been this whole thing. I really have enjoyed Corlys in this whole thing, and I've really enjoyed Laenor. I just have really enjoyed him since they changed actors on that too, because he's just been dynamite. Really good.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, okay, so Morg, we kind of move on to Rhaenyra and Daemon walking along the beach. And I kind of alluded to it earlier. She kind of brings him up to speed on, they're both mourning,
right.
because Harwin is now dead. And even Jacaerys and Lucerys said something about they would rather be at their dad's, basically they'd rather be at their dad's funeral than this funeral. But, and her mom says that's not appropriate, and so.
Right.
But the kids know. Everybody knows. But so Rhaenyra and Daemon are walking along the beach, and she kind of gives him the lowdown on how things have gone. But then kind of walk us through the conversation on the beach and where that goes.
It goes in a
way.
Well,
let's just talk about the conversation. Let's talk about the conversation on the beach first before we get there.
You might have to remind me, because for me, the conversation was mostly, her catch him up to speed, complaining about everything and what's going on and kind of what she really wants. But to me, it seemed more of the whole conversation was her really leaning towards, I want you. We need to.
Yeah.
I'm not a kid.
You can feel that. Yeah. You can feel that tension. They'd still have that sexual attraction to each other. And there's that tension that exists there between the two of them. But she talks about her relationship with Laenor, and they fill in the details a little bit further in the episode, but she says, it's not like we didn't try. We did try a few times, and it just didn't feel right. And then that kind of moves the conversation, which is what I mean earlier when I was saying that it's not quite cut and dried, where they were like, hey, you get to do what you want to do and I get to do what I want to do. It sounds like they at least tried to make some little Targaryen and Valerian babies.
Yeah, right. And again, it shows remember how she was younger, and now she's talked to him about she tried to do her duty.
Right. Yeah.
The thing she hated
Right.
the most. And now she's like, yeah, I tried.
Yeah. And it sounds like they both did. You know, they at least Lenore and Rhaenyra tried to do, you know, to do their thing. So yeah, so then they kind of have like a back and forth as they're walking along the beach, and you know, it basically comes out she's like, you know, I want to be with you, you know, and I'm not a kid anymore. I've had 3 kids at this point, you know, I'm not
Your
a
uncle.
or 2 kids. I have 2 kids already, so I'm not a yeah. So Meg, I think you kind of alluded to it earlier, maybe an uncomfortable, it moves into a Game of Thrones show. It's a Game of Thrones show. So talk about what happens next after their discussion. So,
well, they hook up.
Yeah.
I was a little confused during this scene because it cut from them to Aemon, I think.
Yes.
And I was like, wait, is he going to catch them? And like,
right.
something's going to.
Yeah, they kind of made it seem like, like that's what
I
he was.
too.
But that was 2 separate situations.
Right.
So they go off and they
find like a sticks, a pile of sticks in
shelter along the beach.
Yeah, like I don't know what that was, but
that was strange.
Yeah.
But yeah, they definitely probably had a little more success than she and Laner ever did.
Yeah. Okay.
And then that's go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, what was I know you were watching it. So were you watching it in your car on the Harman Kardon system when you watched this?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, just on my phone at the kitchen table.
Okay.
During lunch.
All right. So you may not have picked up on the music. It was like a weird, I shouldn't say it's a weird music choice. It was weird to me that they tried to make this like a romantic, like this is
they have to
right,
try and make us feel better about it.
Like this is a sweet lovemaking session. Like, hey, could you just forget for a moment that that's her uncle and she's the niece, and they're now doing it. Like, just forget that.
I guess the romantic music was probably more appropriate than like Southern fiddles, you know. So
yeah,
that's right.
The banjo,
little bit, yeah. Yeah, we were keeping it in the family. You know, I'm like, it just was. I get what they're trying to do, but it just is like, I don't care what kind of romantic music you're putting to it. It's still the uncle is putting it to his niece, and it's still
weird as hell. Yeah,
it's just weird, and I don't care. I don't care what kind of lipstick you put on that pig. I'm not buying that, you know, like I'm not into it.
For me, it was like a train wreck. Like, I know I shouldn't watch, but I kept watching.
Yeah. I actually fast forwarded through it because I was like, I can't do this. Like, I don't want to see this. And
it's very good at making you uncomfortable. Like every episode, it's just, there's a little bit of a cringe factor to it.
I was like, nope, I can't do this. I cannot watch this. So anyhow, so you alluded to it earlier, Meg, there was a little bit of confusion. You think that Aemond, the youngest son of Viserys and Alicent, is going to catch Daemon and Rhaenyra, and you're like, oh God, you know, this is going to go worse. But that's not what he's up to. He comes up over the edge of the beach, and Morg, what does he see?
Well, he sees Vhagar. That's what he was after. And you notice, like, early in the episode, you can see him watching the dragons flying. And like in this scene, if you kind of watch it again, you can tell he's hearing the dragon, and that's what he's running towards. But yeah,
I will say subtitles really helped me with this. It was a very dark scene, and I was like, what? And then it said like Vhagar breathing or something, and I was like, okay, that must be a dragon.
And we should, after Morgan's done here, we should talk about that a little bit. We should talk about the cinematography and the choices that they made, because this is a common theme with Game of Thrones stuff. So Morg, what happens?
Well, I loved it because I mean, he sees Vhagar, and Aemon becomes Big D swinging Aemon, and it's like, you know, that thing's mine now.
Yeah.
And walked up and did a little of the Valerian speak to it, and it allowed him to climb on up, and boom, he takes off for, I think, honestly maybe my favorite scene in the whole episode.
And I don't disagree with you. Yeah, I feel the same way.
Seeing him fly around.
It was a great, like, I was thinking to myself, this scene, because it looked like Vagar was trying to shake him off a little bit, you know, just like, hey, get off me, kid. But then
testing him.
But yeah, just testing him, you know, and then eventually she gives in, you know, she eventually submits to him and lets him kind of run the thing. And I thought it was super cool. Being a Harry Potter fan, it felt very Buckbeakish, you know, is what it kind of felt with
much larger scale.
Yes, yeah. Or what is that Hiccup from the How to Train Your Dragon?
How to Train Your Dragon, yeah.
So it was a cool cross between those two, I felt like, but yeah, I thought might have been the best scene as far as like cool factor. It was probably the best scene in the episode. And like you said, once he lands, then we kind of cut to another scene where we finally get some action. But I do want to talk about the choice of, you know, I think these directors and the cinematographers and all that stuff, you know, they have like these $1,000 monitors that they're watching on, and they're watching it on it's a pure digital rip that they're putting on, you know, so they don't have the compression of watching it on a phone or watching it even on a TV. Like I was watching on a 65-inch TV, but it's still a streamed copy of it. And so the bit rate is not very good. It's not all that fantastic. So the choice of really, really making it really, really dark made it really challenging to kind of flesh out details of what was happening in the episode. And we go back to like the final season of Game of Thrones. I mean, the big fight sequence, half of that nobody could see, like, because it was so dark. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? I mean, at some point it's like you got to do something. Like you're robbing your folks, your fans.
Yeah.
So. Right. No, I agree. They should have made it a little bit brighter. Now, I will say, I heard there was a dark scene in this. Yeah, that was hard to see. So me and my wife chose to watch it on our Samsung in the bedroom because that's not an LG OLED, so it's more lit up in the background on it. So I didn't have a problem viewing it.
Okay.
When I watched it.
Yeah.
But I knew if I was on my other TV, I'd
way to drop the OLED in there.
Yeah,
you know,
on my OLED.
I watched it on my OLED television. I'm sure all of you, the rest of you,
watch it.
Sure, the rest of you peons,
plebes are watching.
I had to pretend to be one of the serfs and watch it on my Samsung.
Yeah. Did you have to watch it on your cardboard box with your little, like
the antennas?
Yeah, I used a pizza box to hold up my phone to watch it on. So
I'm sorry. I made sure to have some caviar to make me feel better.
Yeah. So Aemon lands. He's feeling pretty doggone good about himself, you know, and he's got the walk of a man who's just saddled a dragon, and he's feeling pretty doggone good. But there's a couple people to greet him as he's kind of coming down the tunnel. Lena's daughters, both of Lena's daughters and both of Rhaenyra's boys are there to kind of greet him. And it doesn't quite go, I think, how the evening does not go the way Aemon really probably foresaw. So Meg, kind of walk us through that whole scene where they come in and Lena's. What was Lena's daughter's reaction to Aemon coming back with their mom's dragon?
She rightfully so was super pissed because that was her dragon to claim, because it was her mom's dragon.
Right.
And the fact that one, he did it, and two, he did it the day of her damn funeral was really just disgusting. Like the kid is a great actor, but I hate that kid so much. Right. And even though I was rooting for him the whole time with the dragon, I was just like, he's such a little dick. Like, so I was, you know, I loved the punch that she landed on him because he totally deserved it.
Yeah.
And then it just devolves into this horrible fight with insults at first, and then more physical assaulting. But he calls Rhaenyra's kids bastards.
Yeah.
So the thing no one's supposed to talk about, he says it straight out.
Yeah.
And then they start fighting, and it was hard to watch. Like, I work with kids for a living.
Yeah.
You know, not just having my own, but I work with kids, and to see, and there's been a lot of lot of fights this year at school.
Yeah.
And so to see this like happening was really hard to watch. Both the times that he raised that rock up to, smash one of Rhaenyra's kids, it was just like, holy shit, he's really going to do this.
Right.
And then, the one throws the dirt in his eye, and then the other one comes with that blade, and
that was brutal.
Yeah.
It was pretty awful.
Yeah. And as we always see, everybody always says that it's all fun and games until someone literally loses an eye, and in this particular case, yeah, exactly. So it was pretty, I agree with you. It was pretty tough to watch kids fight like that. I thought it was very Lord of the Flies-ish, where they just kind of, the kids all kind of went savage for a little bit there. Yeah, where they just, they lost any civility that they had and just kind of went, no holds barred, and it wasn't pretty to watch. So we get I
want to say something real quick about that, Erik.
Yeah.
I added in there that note, he will have to close an eye. I think there's definitely more to the sister than meets the eye, because in the previous episode, when Aemon was complaining that he didn't have a dragon, and he's like, I want a dragon, talking to his mom. As soon as he starts talking about how he was going to get a dragon, she says he will have to close an eye.
Interesting.
So, interestingly, we think she's speaking nonsense, but she says he'll have to close an eye. He mentions, I want a dragon. And how does he get a dragon? He has to lose an eye, and he gets a dragon.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little more to her.
Yeah, great pickup.
And we realized,
maybe
almost like a Bran the Broken, three-eyed raven type thing,
Yeah. No, that's a great pickup, Morg. That's a great pickup. I did not grab that one before, so that's
so I got to pay attention to her a little more and see. What she's saying
in all of these. Nothing, in scripted television, nothing happens by accident. Everything is there. It's placed there. All the words are pre-written for particular reasons. Some things are just throwaways and others have meaning. And so, that particular character and that particular line is actually, it's a great pickup. So, dynamite. Well, so the Kingsguard guys come busting in, and they kind of break up the fight and everything, and then we kind of snap to the main room at Driftmark. And again, all of this takes place at Driftmark. So we're in the main throne room of Driftmark. They've got the big roaring fireplace in the background, and basically all the cast that was there, for the most part, a lot of the cast that was there is now. So we've got the Kingsguard, we've got Allison, Sir Kristen, Viserys, and everybody's yelling at each other. Viserys is pissed at the Kingsguard because they're like, "How did you let this happen?" And I think Kristen says, "Well, normally, Your Grace, we don't have to keep the princes from fighting each other, and fighting each other versus other people, and then Allison she's really mad at Aegon because he wasn't there to protect his little brother, and so she's having that, and then so Morg, I guess Rhaenyra comes through the door with Corlys and Rhaenys, and she kind of comes charging in. So kind of talk to us about how Rhaenyra kind of handles that situation there.
Yeah, I mean, Rhaenyra comes into it with straight anger. I mean, understandably, when you come bursting in because you hear your kids are in a fight, you're going to be angry. But I was surprised at how angry she still was, even after seeing like her son literally slice the kid's eye out. He just made him lose an eye.
Yep.
But it just, this whole dives again, it leads into, I don't think they're really showing her like Rhaenyra, I don't think is meant to be a leader. Because she's been making so many bad decisions, and you see it playing out. But it just snowballs this fight.
Yeah. And not just her, like the two people that are gonna be, they're both not good people. Like
They're
Aegon,
both just angry. And...
Aegon is a clueless dirtbag. Like, you know, like he just is a clueless idiot. And Rhaenyra is just, she makes bad choices, you know. So this is what it's going to come down to, is these two people are going to be the ones who everything is kind of fighting over. So yeah.
Right. And you know, and then Allison basically says, hey, an eye for an eye, man.
Right.
I'm taking one of their eyes. I'll let them pick which eye they can keep.
Yeah. Yep. So Viserys kind of, you know, kind of busts in, and he starts kind of taking over everything, and is just like, you know.
Well, he was trying to get control of the room, and the kids are like screaming over each other, telling their side of the story. Kind of It took a really long time for a king to kind of get control of the room. And I mean, I think partly just because of who he is and how he is, but also because he's super old and feeble at this point, and he just couldn't get his voice to carry.
Yeah.
And then, you know, everything kind of, he gets to the point where, you know, Rhaenyra asks who did this, and he gets everybody to call him, you know, quiet down, and Jacaerys says he called us bastards.
Right. Yeah.
And then Viserys gets real mad about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because Rhaenyra then takes this is the opening that she's kind of been hoping for, because now she has a room full of people. You know, so at this point, at the point in the series, Allison has been underhanded in all of her accusations towards Rhaenyra, and she's sniped behind her back, and she's put things into place to try to maneuver things and all this stuff. But she's constantly whispered into her husband's ear that they're, you know, that this isn't right. And she's just been very underhanded. And so this is like Rhaenyra's opportunity in front of God and everyone, to put Alicent on the spot, you know, because everybody knows who's been spreading this, you know, well, everybody knows because everybody knows, because it's the truth. But Rhaenyra thinks that it's Alicent that's, you know, really the one leading the charge, and she's not wrong. Alicent is the one leading the charge when it comes to you know, what's kind of going on. So Rhaenyra uses this as an opportunity to kind of pin Alicent down in front of her father, and, you know, say, you know, there have been accusations made about my children being illegitimate, and this is high treason. You know, like, you're saying that my son is not, you know, my children are not who they should be, and they are not, you know, supposed to be who they, you know, they're not who they are. And so Viserys then questions Aemond, Prince Aemond, and says, you know, who told you that they were bastards? And he looks at his mom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, here it comes, you know, and he doesn't. He's smart enough to at least go, well, Aegon told me, you know, my brother, he throws his brother totally under the bus, and he's like, you know,
yeah, that was great.
And Aegon's like, I swear, he's like halfway through a drink, he's like, what? You know, like, I think I can just see him,
spit take.
Like, trying to, you know, it's like, what? You know, something along those lines. But yeah, so Viserys is questioning him. He almost throws his mom under there, and so I think, you know, Meg, kind of talk about Alicent and Otto in this situation. There's a lot of looks that are kind of going back and forth. There's a lot of, you know, Daemon's moving kind of around the room. He's leaning back. He's kind of in the corner,
just enjoying the drama,
you know. But you can see Alicent knows that this is not going the way she wants it to go, and Otto, you can kind of see kind of the same thing. So I'm trying to put it all back in like chronological order how it happened, but Viserys asks, like, where did you hear it? And then he looks at his mom, but then he says it was Aegon, right? And
then is that where, or maybe it was before all of that happened, Alicent tried to throw in like a kind of like derail it and kind of change the subject, and
right, then, about asking where's the boy's father. You know, and it was a dig. You're absolutely right. You're right. It was, I am out of order on that one. So she tries to zero it back in. And again, it's another dig about the legitimacy. Well, where is the boy's, you know, they're talking about the legitimacy of these children. Well, where is the boy's father? You know, and it's just like, okay, well, yeah, where is he? you know, because where is Lenor? Because that's supposed to be his dad. Where is Lenor? Like all this stuff is going on. And Allison gets that dig in about he's probably out with his new young squire or something like that. And it's like, you know, she just can't help herself. She can't help herself.
It's like, come on, bad timing.
Yeah, all composure is lost at this point, which I get. I mean, your kid literally just had his eye cut out. So, you know, so all of this is kind of coming up to a boil.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? And Aegon, again, the kid is kind of clueless or whatever, but Meg, Viserys looks at him and says, who spoke these lies to you?
By Allison's question. She wants to know who told you this.
And you know what? Aegon nuts up in front of everybody and is just like, you know, and what does he say, Meg? What does he tell them? He tells the whole room. He's like,
everyone knows. Just look at them.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and the room kind of gets quiet for a moment. You know, it just kind of gets quiet. And
that kid delivered those lines so well. Like the way he acted.
Yeah, he did.
He looked scared, shy, but also like, come on, like you know, like, come on.
Yep. And like I said, this kid is really annoyed me. Like I just have not like, and that's a sign to me. That's a sign of great acting. It really is. Like I just despise this kid, and I think that's what they were going for. You know. But So then Allison then says what you were saying.
Like was basically like, okay, we're done with this. We're not going to question this anymore. And anybody who does question it, I'm going to cut your tongue out.
Yeah.
So Allison is basically like at that point, like, well, I can't question the legitimacy of her kids anymore.
Right.
But she's not ready to drop the issue that her son had his eye cut out, and she wants an eye for his eye.
Right.
And she tried to get Kristen to do it. She said, "You serve me." Or you're sworn to me or whatever. And he said he hesitated and was like, to protect you, not to attack a child.
Right.
Demanded, was it Jacaerys? She said, I demand Jacaerys's eye or whatever. And he's like, I'm not going to do that.
He's like, I'm going to do it. Which at this point, it's the first time since like two episodes ago that I've been like, okay, you know, like I'm with Sir Kristen on that one. You know, I haven't really liked how he and Allison. He's such a bitter man at this point now. You know, he hates Rhaenyra for what they did. And it's really been a downer for me because I really liked Sir Kristen up to that point, but then, but I understand. It's not that I don't like it. So she says something along the lines of, I'll let you choose, which is something my son didn't get, or something along those lines. Like, you know, I'll let you choose which eye, which is something like, well, here, hold your thumb out and tell me, you know, and then close one eye and tell me which one's that way. I know which one's your dominant, you know, I guess, or whatever. It's like, you got to choose that. But yeah, Morg. So then the tension kind of ratchets up where everybody's, or I guess after that, it's like, you know what, Viserys is like, this proceeding is over with, you know, like this is done. And you think at that point, of course, it's Game of Thrones, that we're done, you know, and that everybody's just kind of go back to their corner, lick your wounds and all that stuff. But that's not what happens. So Morg, walk us through what happens next then.
Yeah, that is not what happens. Allison decides she doesn't like that we're done. She's like, this ain't done. So she basically takes that knife and charges at Rhaenyra. You know, whether it's her or the kids she was trying to get, she charges at their direction.
Right.
And I believe that she did get stopped before she did the cut.
She gets to Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra stops her. So Rhaenyra intercepts her. At the same time, Sir Kristen moves to protect her, but Daemon moved himself and stops Sir Kristen. So it's then just a moment of Alicent is trying to stab a child in the eye, or whoever she can, you know. So I don't know how you
with a blade
the future queen.
Yeah, I don't know how you
stole off the king.
Right? Don't know how you put, you know, how you dress that one up to make yourself look good, but yeah. So Rhaenyra stops her, and then how does it kind of play out? Because there's some really great lines.
Oh yeah. I mean, Rhaenyra is happy about this almost.
Yeah, almost.
She's just like, you've gone too far.
Right.
and says, exhausting, isn't it? Hiding under the cloak of your own righteousness, but now they see you for who you really are.
Right.
So this basically just exposed the current queen to what she really is.
Right.
Very vengeful, spiteful, mean, angry, what Rhaenyra is seeing.
Right.
And now everybody sees it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
everybody in the
everybody's
room.
now on Rhaenyra. Yeah, everybody in the room.
Everybody in the room.
So the hope is everybody's on Rhaenyra's side.
Right.
That's her hope now.
Right.
See.
Or at least if they didn't realize there was some sort of conflict between the Greens and the Blacks, now everybody knows there's a division there, and this is only going to get worse. This is only going to get worse as it kind of goes back, comes back in. So Meg, sorry, Morg. So you're not sure how that's going to end, and then all of a sudden it kind of snaps, and Allison slices Rhaenyra's arm, and everything gets really quiet, which I thought was really great, because you had all this arguing and all this loud shouting and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden the scene goes deathly quiet, and all you hear is the drip of blood, on the floor as it's coming out of her arm, and I think that's when Allison really realizes that the situation spun way out of control, and she looks terrible in front of just about everybody.
Yeah, kind of hard to walk that back.
Right.
Yeah.
Literally just sliced open the princess's arm.
And I love how it sets up that split between that's the Civil War.
Yep.
You see it. Yep. That's the house is divided. There it is. Right there.
So Meg, Aemond, who's been our guy, I think Morgan said it earlier, maybe you said it earlier. This episode, I think, secretly belongs to Aemond. Maybe not so secretly, but really. So what happens next?
He kind of quiets everything down and just says, do not mourn me, mother. It was a fair exchange. I may have lost an eye, but I gained a dragon.
Yeah.
And, so there he is, Big D swinging again, it is what it is, but I got the biggest dragon I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So
loud thump on the table.
Yeah. And golly day, man, the kid delivered that line so well. I got chills listening to it. I watched it a couple of different of different times, because I was like, man, what a baller thing to say.
It's baller.
And I was like, man, what a great, because literally the room is loaded with people, and for a guy his age to deliver a line like that in front of everybody, that's pretty spectacular. So
as an actor, it was really cool. And then when you think about he's a kid, know, and it was a pretty baller move.
Yeah. So we move to everybody kind of departs and goes their separate way. We move to a scene between Otto and Allison, and Allison is very remorseful, and she basically tells her father, I'm sorry, I acted below my station. I was impulsive. She basically does a whole mea culpa, saying, hey, I'm really sorry about this. And Otto says, all those things are true, but at the same time, you showed devotion and a backbone today that I had not seen, and I didn't even know existed in you. And I feared it didn't exist, but you stood up for your family, you stood up for everyone, and you took action. And then he finally wraps it up. Basically, he slaps her on the butt and says, great game, and, he says, the king is going to forgive you because he doesn't have any other choice. He's not going to hold this against you forever. And, because it's not in his nature. He's not a vengeful guy like that. And then he wraps it up basically saying the same thing that Aemond said, the boys' actions, whatever they are, we now have the biggest dragon in all the land, and so he kind of praises Aemond grabbing Vhagar. So we move to a scene, Meg, I'll come back to you. The Laenor and Rhaenyra scene. I think this one, I may have taken this one differently than you had, just from a female perspective, because I looked at that as a scene of him recommitting himself to her and she recommitting herself to him. But is that really what happened there, or was she...
Initially, I thought he was going to try to like ask for a divorce, which I don't think exists in this world.
Right. Yeah,
right. So then when he sat down and he was like, look, you know, we tried to make it work with, we each, you know, having our enjoyment on the side and, you know, do our duties, but not really being that serious about it. And he's like, I failed you.
Yeah.
You know, I want to, you know, recommit myself to you. We're going to try to make this work. I'm going to be a better man and a better husband to you. And so it kind of, that shifted in my brain then, like what was actually happening.
Right.
You know, which made the end of the episode totally like out of nowhere.
Yeah, not what I expected. Yeah. Okay, so you read it the same way I read it then, was that they were both kind of recommitting themselves to the whole situation. Like Lena's like, "Hey, look, I see this and I'm part of the reason why this, because I've been gallivanting around the countryside with every, squire that's come along, and I haven't been a very good father to the boys. I've let that go to other people, blah, 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 that type of stuff." So yeah. Okay. So that's kind of what I was thinking as well then.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
so Morg, we move out away from that scene and we see Rhaenyra and Daemon standing, I'm sorry. They're standing, at Driftmark looking out and watching the king's ship kind of sail away, and they're having a conversation, which, before I talk about that, one thing I thought was really weird is like one ship, like, I mean, this is the king, like, and I noticed it in the first episode, when they set sail, I was like, really, you're going to let the king go without any type of escorts across the narrow sea and all that other stuff?
To be fair, they had a big ass dragon or two with them, so maybe that was all they needed.
True. Yeah, maybe that's all.
Sure, I guess. Yeah, if they're flying around on the dragons,
maybe that's their protection. But yeah, I just found it's kind of weird. They only had one boat, that there were no escorts or anything like that. But yeah, so they're on they're standing at Driftmark watching the water, and they see the king and Allison, moving away. And so they had an interesting conversation there. So to walk us through that.
Yeah, it gets even more weird. Just when you thought it couldn't. Yeah, so basically they're just having a conversation talking about, to me, it's basically how they're just trapped. They're both trapped is how they feel.
Yeah.
Daemon is talking about how fire is a prison. They reference some fire all the time with them because of the dragons and the fire in their blood.
Right.
And Daemon says the sea is always right. Something along the lines of that, or like the sea is an escape.
Right. Something along that.
I don't quite remember what he says. Something like that.
Right.
And Rhaenyra basically is like, listen, I need you.
Yeah.
I can't face the Greens without you. I need you. We need to be together.
Right.
And he notes like, well, we can't. Unless Leonard's dead, we can't do anything.
Yeah, and he comes right out and says that. Unless Leonard's dead, we can't do that.
And that's when my gut.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
I was like, and that's when she delivers the coldest line she's ever delivered. She goes, I know. And you're like, oh man, I knew as soon as he spilled his heart, like, I'll be here, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, you're going to die.
Yeah, exactly.
That whole conversation between them, the way that they did the conversation and then the scenes correlating to that conversation was so well done.
Yeah, because I was like,
part.
Did I read that conversation totally wrong? I she was actually like, hey, it's not you, it's me. And he's like, hey, I'm going to recommit myself to you. And I'm thinking she's thinking 2 moves ahead and being like, hey man, it ain't gonna matter because I'm moving on, And
promise yourself all you want.
Buddy. Right. And I was like, man, did I read that whole conversation wrong? But yeah. So we cut to a scene of Alicent on the ship. Larys is again lurking as he normally does, and so she finally comes out and says, Larys says, "Do you want me to take one of the kids' eyes?" Because he's a sociopath. Apparently, Larys is a complete sociopath, and it's like, well, he's not going to do it, but he would have somebody take the kid's eye. And she says, not now. So she's starting to embrace her dark side at this, and that she's going to have to get her hands dirty. And
she's a little afraid of him too. You see,
I think so. I think so. Yeah, because that's one of those. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Because the sociopath will only keep you as long as you're useful to him, and that's what it really comes down to. But so her reply back to him is not now, but one day will come where I will need your loyalty, and the way she delivers and discretion. Like when she says that, Laris gives her this little wink and a smile and is like, like I know what you want,
We're in cahoots.
Jeffrey Dahmer fridge.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So
punching the heads like Negan and Walking Dead.
Yeah. And so then we cut to again governor. Damon lurking in a cloak somewhere. Last time we saw Damon lurking in a cloak, he killed his wife, and so now we're seeing him lurking with a cloak. And we see Sir Coral, and Damon hands him a bag of gold and talks to him about a man that doesn't have a title with a bag of gold can live a pretty good life across the sea, and Carl's kind of like, well, what are you asking me? And he says just a public death is all. And you're like,
wasn't it like a painless death with an audience or something? He said,
yeah, it might be a painless,
like
painless death with an audience, or something along those lines. But he wanted to make sure that everybody saw it and stuff. And so you're like, same with you, Meg. Like my heart kind of went into my throat when I saw that, because I was like, oh, please, man, like don't
really
do
like
this.
Laner.
Yeah, I really do.
Right,
like he's kind of a clueless idiot.
Yet.
Yeah, he's kind of a clueless idiot. But like of all the like relationships, I'm like those two guys, like they like each other. It's like I'm like, God, don't turn those dudes against each other. But it's like, okay, well, I guess they're gonna do it. But so anyhow,
yeah, and that's I don't hate Rhaenyra yet. She's still pretty solid badass in my mind, and I'm not, she's not on my bad side yet. But this part, I was like, man, this is really gonna make me hate her.
Yeah.
Like, I did not like where I thought this was going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So so the next scene is you see Carl and Laner having a fight. Well, you see Carl sneak in. He sneaks in and kills one of the guards.
Yeah, Damon snaps
his neck.
Damon sneaks in.
Subtitles: snaps neck.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Damon sneaks in, and you think, oh, okay, it's gonna be some sort of like an assassination or whatever, and Damon's doing it. So Damon goes in and snaps this dude's neck, and then you see this big fight between Carl and Laner. And in front of his squire, and the squire's like, no, don't do this, and then he's like, I'm going to go get help. And so it's like, okay. And so then the very next scene is you see Corlys kind of bust through the door, and he sees the body of Laenor in the fireplace on fire, and
unrecognizable, but
yes,
it is
very
Laenor,
sharp. Yes,
but he has the chain.
Yep, it's got the chain on there. I mean, it looks like Laenor. It's dressed in the same stuff and all that stuff and all that. So, and then we hear Rhaenys comes in and she's crying about her son. Now they've lost both their kids. Both Corlys and Rhaenys have lost both their kids, and so you feel for them. You really do. But then we get kind of a split scene where Rhaenyra and Daemon are having their they're having a wedding, and they're marrying each other, and
really weird.
It's really weird.
Blood.
Yeah,
I know. It's like, come on, you guys are already marrying each other. Why do you got to make it even more weird? Like you always step it up.
Yeah, it's like they're cutting each other's lips, and
I know.
I'm like,
enough with the weirdness.
Yeah, and then they're cutting their hands, and like it's like all this blood and stuff like that. And I'm like, all right, we get it. We get it. Okay. But, and then I'm like, yeah. And so your nephews are now your kids, your nephews and your cousins are now each other's kids. And it's
daddy.
Yeah.
Daddy, uncle.
My dad, who's also my favorite uncle, is, it's just this weird. It's just
weird.
It's not going to be normal. I'm not going to let it be normal.
It's going to cause some issues.
Yeah. So we get the two of them finally marry each other, and now it's legit. And my belief is that she's already pregnant with their first child. So we'll be looking at another time jump for the next episode. But the very
it's the last jump.
This will be the last jump. So, so the very last scene is we see Carl escaping in a boat from Driftmark, and we see that a cloaked individual is assisting him in getting out. And so Morg, what do we see?
Who could that be? Why the cloak goes back, and it is Lena on the boat with no hair.
Yep. He shaved his head.
The hair gives you away.
Yep.
Shaved his head, and clearly we see the plot was not to kill him.
Right.
The plot was to make it seem like he was dead.
Yeah.
Get out of there. Which again, to be fair, another big mistake on Renera's part, because that's going to bite her in the ass.
Maybe, I don't know. I really don't think so. I think Lenore knows. Lenore has never had any aspirations, at least not that I could see, for anything more than just a simple life of being who he wants to be. He likes to be a soldier.
I'd be more worried about somebody seeing him.
Yeah, true, absolutely.
But I think you're right. He would be like, no, he's done. Like, he's gone. Yeah. Like, he doesn't care.
Yeah.
But if somebody sees it, if he accidentally lets his hair grow and somebody happens to catch it.
Yeah. I think if I could say anything, it's the only happy ending in this entire series to this point. The watching these two go off with each other, and it's like you're gonna get a smidge of happiness. Take what you can, and so I don't know if those two will return in some way, shape, or form, or if Coral will return in some shape or form later on in the series. The story doesn't make it clear. It just says that they both died, and Lena and Lena died and stuff, and that Carl and him had a fight, and he was killed by his lover, and stuff. So we'll see. I think we'll just be satisfied with the happy ending we got there, and then.
If they don't do anything, that'll make me happy.
Yeah.
It's just
So all in all, episode 7, dynamite. Like, just a dynamite episode. Really, really liked it. We got some really great comments from some folks this week, some engagement. We had a new person, Bay, I think, made some comments on the YouTube channel. Some really great theories, some really great stuff. I think Morg, your call out with the he's going to lose an eye thing, or has to close an eye thing, that was very
I think
cool.
She's got some sight,
and so maybe that's where we're going to get that stuff, kind of the mysticism, because it's been very pragmatic and practical this entire series. 7 episodes of very little magic, very little mysticism stuff. It's been very much just politics and relationships up to this point,
and dragons.
And dragons.
The only mysticism in there.
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's real.
But I was going to say, it's not like they're like fantasy, like I can only certain people see the dragons, like that would be like weird. It's like, well, you're not Valerian, so you don't see the dragons, but like they're like elephants or whatever in this world. So
all I know is these people need some Dominic Toretto in their lives to teach them what family really is.
What's your family?
Because these guys have no family.
I think they have a pretty solid understanding.
Give them a couple Coronas.
Yeah. I think I'm with you, Meg.
I think too into family,
right? Yeah.
Oh, we know.
Yeah, they took It's All About Family to a whole new level. I think the Targaryens do, at least. So, well, yeah, great show tonight, guys. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for listening. At home, or in your car, or on your phone sitting in a parking lot, if that's what you're doing there, Meg. Meg, thanks so much again for catching up with the show and joining us. Morg, you're the best. With that being said, we will see you all next week on the Nerd Rundown Recaps. See ya. Bye.
Deuces.
Keros Ilas.
Oh,
I don't know if that's right.
Meg with the
Sounds good.